Hello friends, welcome to this session. Today we are going to discuss about what to read in the GS Prelims paper 1. We have already told you in the previous videos. If you haven't yet watched it, please have a look at it. I have already told you about the sources, that is the books, the magazines that are to be followed for GS Prelims paper 1. Today I am going to tell you exactly what you have to read, the topics and the subtopics. So let us start. As you can see on your screen, these are the pillars. This is a 9-pillar strategy for UPSC Prelims 2017. They are as follows: history, polity, economy, geography, environment and maps. I have deliberately and purposefully kept it in one section because they are interconnected, interrelated. And then we have the miscellaneous, science and tech, art and culture and international relations. Now we begin with history part. So in history there are 3 divisions. We all know the ancient, the medieval and the modern. Now the medieval part, most of the aspirants they skip, because even if questions come from that part, they are too complicated and only hardly 1 or 2 questions come. So even if we skip that part, I don't think it will cost much, but it is up to you. If you don't want to skip, you can read that part, but for me I will skip that part. So in ancient history, I have already told you the source, the NCRTs and the chapters that are over there. For example, the Jainism, Buddhism, the early Vedic period, the later Vedic period. These are the few topics that are very important from prelims point of view. And while you read the ancient history, I would tell you to concentrate particularly on the temples, the art and the architecture part, because that will along with the ancient history, it will cover up your art and culture syllabus too. Now the next one is the modern Indian history. In modern Indian history we cannot cut short, so we have to read the entire spectrum book that I have told you already, from the first chapter to the last chapter. But I think there is a new edition that has been published recently of the Spectrum Modern Indian History. I do have the old edition, that is the last edition, and there it starts from the revolt of 1857. So according to my book, from first chapter to page number 250, that completes the entire freedom struggle. So at the beginning you have to read from page 1 to page 250, and then you read the later pages. It will be very easy for you to cover up the entire book, because what you have to remember is mainly from page 1 to 250. Alright, so we come to polity now. In polity, first of all you just cover up the basics, that is what is a preamble, what are schedules, what are articles, what is constitutionalism, the definition of states, federalism, basic structure of constitution, procedure for amendments, what are the different kinds of motions. Okay, so you just go through these basics. If you are not acquainted with them, just go through them, so that it will be easy for you to read the entire book, because constantly they will go on speaking about article this, schedule this, so you will get confused if you do not have the basics. Then you go to start reading from article 1 to 51A, that covers union and its territory, citizenship, fundamental rights, directive principles of state policies and fundamental duties. Now each year question comes from either fundamental right, fundamental duty or directive principles of state policy. So be careful while you read them, concentrate on each and every word, and all the words should be there at the back of your mind. So just in one sentence I would say, mug them up. You have to mug up these 3 chapters very well. Then we move on to the parliament. Now in parliament, just go through these chapters: the President, Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, the bill making procedure, funds, committees, forum, motions, and privileges. Okay, so this is the parliament. Then read the union and the state and union territory one after the other, because you will find that there are certain matches between them, like for the union, the constitutional head is the president, while the administrative head is the prime minister. In a similar way, for the state, it's the governor and the chief minister. So if you correlate in this way, it will be easy for you to remember. So for union, we have the president, the vice president, the council of ministers, prime ministers, and attorney general. So and again, there is a fundamental question which comes, that the union consists of whom? You will be given options, so you have to remember. We usually forget that attorney general is a part of union, so you have to remember attorney general too is a part of union, along with president, vice president, prime minister, and council of ministers. Next we come to the state and union territory. There you have the governor, the lieutenant general, administrator, council of ministers, advocate general, and also read the state legislature along with the union legislature, because as you have the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha in the union, you have the state legislature and the state legislative assembly and the state legislative councils. In most of the states you have only state legislative assembly, and in few states you have the state legislative councils too, so you have to remember that. Next is the local government. Panchayat, that is the 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act, municipalities, 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, and cooperative societies, that is the 97th Constitutional Amendment Act. Now see, when our constitution was made initially, so it was designed according to the criteria of that period when it was made, but with the progressing time, things have been changing, environment have been changing, situations have been changing, so the constitution gets amended whenever it feels that it has to change itself according to the moving scenario around us. So those are called the constitutional amendment acts. So you have to remember these are very important: the 73rd, the 74th, and the 97th. Now if you have gone through newspaper in the previous year, we all know that the Bangladesh boundary disputes that was resolved by the 100th Constitutional Amendment Act. So the 100th Constitutional Amendment Act is also very important. In this way, there is a list that has been given at the back of the Polity by M. Lakshmikant book, so you can go through that. Next we come to the judiciary part. There we have the Supreme Court, the High Court, and the subordinate courts. Then is the federal system, the center state and interstate relation, legislative, executive, financial, administrative, and emergency. Emergencies, we all know that there are 2-3 types: the financial emergency, the president's rule, okay, and this sort of, so you have to be familiar with all this. Then we come to the constitutional bodies, the election commission, the UPSC, SPSC, finance commission, the comptroller and auditor general, attorney general, advocate general, and so on and so forth. So these are also given as a separate chapter, a separate unit. You can go through it. Then we come to the non-constitutional bodies, and from there to other constitutional dimensions. Under this special provision that has been mentioned in the slide is very important, because special provisions we have for Jammu and Kashmir, and then for these northeastern states. So these things are in news too much, so you have to be aware of it. Then comes the election. What is the system of conducting elections, the state elections, the union elections, and so questions will come like this: whether the Election Commission of India conducts the elections at the local panchayats, municipalities. So see, we all tend to get confused if we are asked this sort of questions suddenly. So we have to be familiar with what the exact answer is. So this covers the entire polity part. You have to be thorough with these chapters: the fundamental rights, duties, directive principle of state policies, the state, the union, and for state and union, all the three: the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary, then the constitutional bodies, the non-constitutional bodies, the extra constitutional bodies, the constitutional amendment acts. So these are the things which you have to be familiar with. Next we come to the economics section. Now for economics, I have already told you in my previous lecture that the basic NCERT has to be read. It's a must for class 11 and 12 NCERTs. There you will get some basic concepts like how money flows in the entire system. Like suppose all those who have an economics background, they know it very well. It's a very simple concept, but there are some people who have never studied economics in their life, so it becomes very difficult for them. So just to understand the basics, how money flows, like suppose I buy something from the shop and I use it, so I consume it, that is called consumption, and a part of it I sell to the other person, so in this way I make a profit, and he again goes to sell it to some other guy. So in this way, how money is flowing in the entire economy, and at the end of the day we pay tax to the government, and how that tax is utilized by the government to subsidize various schemes. So this is the flow of money. You have to read it. Then you have to read about RBI, the Monetary Policy Committee, the fiscal policy, the balance of payment, the budget, and there are certain tidbit points, that is the intermediaries, and there are many things like what is high powered money, and then just keep tracking the current affairs news, that is the electoral bonds that we have covered in a recent news analysis that we keep uploading every day. So you can just cope up with those terms. These terms keep coming in the news. Then we move on to the international bodies and the reports. This part is very important because questions, if is being asked from economics, certainly a question on this part will be asked. It covers the IMF, World Bank, World Economic Forum, ADB, AIIB, NDB, National Development Bank, WTO, UNDP, UNCTAD, SDSN. So you just I have purposefully read out just the short form so that it develops a curiosity in you, and you go and Google each of them and just see from the ministry website, read about them, what is it, what is its full form, how many members each one has, and what are the criteria or the set of rules for each members who are participants of the particular organization. Then I already told you, you have to go through the economic survey and the budget. Those are very important because you have to know about the new policies and concepts that are being introduced over there, and then you have to read about the miscellaneous terms that are being continued in the news every day. After that we move on to the geography part. In geography there are mainly three divisions. First one is the India and the world, second one is the physical geography, and the third one is the human geography. Now human geography is not so important from the prelims point of view. What you have to concentrate on is the physical and the India and world geography, especially the physical geography, where you will study about different types of rainfall and about the soils and irrigations and the coral reefs. So these things are very important. Then we move on to the maps. Now with geography, obviously whenever you read something you have to have a look at the map, both the India and the world. And a map doesn't mean that only you are reading about a particular place, so you will look up in the map about that particular place. You have to remember each continent, each country, and inside each continent what are the countries in the sequence. Like for example, whenever we read about Africa, you see on the right hand side there is a horn shaped thing that has been made in the map. So questions are being asked that what are the countries that are being covered in that part. So I guess there is Libya and all these things that are being covered in that part. So you have to remember like what are the countries that are being covered in the horns of Africa. So in this way, there is the Madagascar island, the Falkland Island, and these are in news too much, so you need to know. And at the beginning of the map, you have to read about the equator. What are the places through which the equator pass? What are the places through which Tropic of Cancer passes? What are the places through which Tropic of Capricorn passes? Now, so in this way, and again, while you read geography, you have to know about the time zones. So for India, the time zone that we follow passes through the longitude 82.5 degree east. So questions come that 82.5 degree east passes through which of the following places in India. So you have to know what are the states through which that line passes. So just take a map, and while you read, just take a pen of any color, I mean a bright color, either red, green or something like that, and you will find that line already drawn in your atlas. So you just highlight the line and mark through which of the states it pass. So these are some of the basics of maps, and if you want, I can prepare a separate lecture for it. It might help you, so just let me know in the comment box below. Then we come to the environment part. In environment, you have to learn about the basics, that is terms related to environment, pollution, what are the different types of forests, national parks, biospheres, Ramsar sites, UNESCO, critically endangered species, and all these things you will get in the Shankar IAS book that I have already told you. And mainly the international conventions and agreements. These are very important. Like for example, we had millennium development goals before, now we have the sustainable development goals, and we had the Paris climate agreement. How is it different from the this other agreements, like the one which will be held in Copenhagen, and the Rio plus 20. So you will get all these things in that particular book. And whatever you don't get, you just Google, or else we'll cover it in our news analysis that we give every day. The second is the international relations. So this part is very important from both prelims and mains point of view. Here I'm just going to read out certain names of certain groupings which are must before the prelims, but there are certain other groupings that will keep coming in the news. So you have to track that, and you have to read about them. Like for example, here I will take the name of TPP, which has been recently in news 2 days ago, and then the RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. Then you have to read about the UNO, G20, G7, G8, BRICS, IBSA, SARC, SCO, RCEP, ASEAN. Okay, so a list has been given over here, you can go through it. And what is Wassenaar Agreement, what is Australia Group. So here what is important is that you have to read that how many members are there in each of them. So you will see some, in some there will be ASEAN plus 3 plus 3, ASEAN plus 2, and in this way you have to remember the names of the countries, what are the agreements that has been taken place between them, what are the rules that is to be followed, and if the rules is violated, then where they will they go to the International Court of Justice, or is there a particular country to whom they will address. So you have to be thorough with all these things. So that completes our 9 pillar strategy, and of course there is the 10th one, that is the current affairs. It's a vast thing, we all know, and I have already told you about how to tackle it, so I'm not going to repeat it here. You can just have a look, and just keep following our everyday news analysis. And if you want us to make a lecture series on any of the topics, like for example polity, modern Indian history, any of the 9 pillars, you are feel free to tell us, and just leave your comments in the comment box below. And if you have any doubt, you can leave in the comment box below, we will get back to you as soon as possible. All right, so I hope your preparations are going well, and these videos are helping you during your preparations. Kindly let us know, and thank you so much for patiently listening to me. Hope to meet you soon. Thank you.